basically say that there are qualities of the human brain that naturally leave it open to a religious sensibility.
You know, a big question is this: did God create us, or did we create the idea of God? Check this clip out.
You can talk religion with a really intelligent person who's objective, who has a belief. It's such an interesting subject because it requires suspension of disbelief in order to absorb some of the stories. But there's clearly a history behind this of thousands of years of translations, and you're trying to get to what did they mean when they wrote this down, and how much did they know, and what were they trying to do? Were they just trying to get everybody to calm down and stay in line?
Right.
Now, I've heard this argument a lot, like the Bible being used by the Roman government to control people. That doesn't really make sense in the course of history, but check out what this man says again. I have something to share with you on the matter after the clip is over, so stick around.
Or were they trying to find some means of gluing the group together by a shared belief? Or, there are folks who basically say that there are qualities of the human brain that naturally leave it open to a religious sensibility. I mean, for instance, we have agency detection systems in our brain where we look around the world and we tend to assign agency to things that happen. That's useful, right? Because, if you mistake a windblown branch for a jaguar, it's fine. You thought it was a jaguar, but it's just a branch. But if the reverse happens, you think it was a jaguar and you think it's a windblown branch, you're going to get eaten. So we tend to over-endow agency into the world. There is evolutionary value to that. So when the wind blows, we tend to think there's a mind up there. When the river gurgles, we tend to think that there's a mind in there. And this is sort of the seed for the kinds of perspectives that you'll find in many of the world's religions. So there's natural course of events that can lead to the arising of the institution, or at least the ideas behind the institution of religion. And for students that have never encountered that idea before, it can really shake things up, and I think in a very valuable way. So I think you're absolutely right. Having a conversation with somebody who has a religious perspective is deeply interesting. To understand where that mind came to the place that it got to. And from a personal sensibility, I give you, I just give you one little anecdote. My dad died. I was 23 years old. And unexpectedly, I'd been visiting home. I was at Harvard at the time. I was visiting from Cambridge, and we had a nice weekend. And by the time I got back to Cambridge on the bus, my mom called me and said, "Dad's dead." It was so shocking. It was like so sudden. It was so complete. And I remember I went back home, and my dad was not a religious man, but we knew that he would want to have a religious ceremony, and we did it. And we had, a minion of Jews coming to the house to recite the Kaddish prayer, because we weren't religious. We didn't know what we were doing, And I had no idea what these men were saying, but it was deeply comforting. In fact, I didn't want to know what they were saying. To me, it was just a collection of ancient sounds, but the sounds connected me across the generations to a culture that had been extending back 5,000 years. And in a moment of crisis, that was a very comforting and useful connection to have.
Now, it's an intriguing thought. I mean, what if evolution is what brought about belief in God and religion? And religion itself helped to keep people together, so people evolved to keep believing in religion. But now we live in 2025, and so religion doesn't matter anymore because we have science. Well, people have been practicing science for all of human history. Science is just basically finding out what truth is and testing it over and over. But it is an interesting argument. I mean, what if it is evolution that has created God? For me, it's not a very strong argument because I've had experiences with God that have altered exterior situations outside of my own interior being. Now, the argument would be very strong if I've only had these experiences internally with my mind, maybe dreams or certain experiential feelings and whatnot. Okay, maybe that makes sense. But I've seen interaction with God that has influenced things on the outside, even physical healing manifesting in my body. And not only in me, but in other people, and even hearing things about the future that I would have never known. For example, I felt strongly that something big was going to happen in 2020. I thought it was a hurricane, but at the very least, I knew something big was going to happen in 2020. So much so that I actually moved away from Florida and bought a large piece of property in the country. And once we were settled, COVID breaks out. And I actually had the audio recording. People are like, well, what proof do you have? I actually have it on record. I record on my phone when I was talking to my wife, and I'm like, something big is going to happen in 2020. Something massive. And I had that feeling during a deep spiritual experience with the Lord. So I don't know, do we evolve to tell the future? I mean, maybe that, I guess eventually that might be an argument, but for me, it just makes more sense. God created us. He created our minds. He formed our minds and our bodies to be able to sense his presence and have interactions with him and even angels. Because people have seen angels and people have seen Jesus. I mean, just look up the amount of testimonies of Muslims experiencing Jesus and seeing Jesus in dreams and in real life, seeing the man in white who reveals himself as Jesus Christ. There are so many Muslims coming to Jesus because they're experiencing Jesus in these dreams and visions. Is that evolutionary? Are we evolving to trust in Christianity? Maybe so. But all I know is this: God created our minds. Our minds are wired to experience him and to come into relationship with him. And he is not only affecting the interior habitat of our lives, but also the exterior environment. And also too, we gotta ask, I mean, there are prophecies in here coming to pass all over the place throughout human history. Things that people did not know back then are coming to pass today. So let's acknowledge the fact that, yeah, that's a strong argument, our brains evolving to believe in God and religion, but at the same time, it makes sense if God created our brains in the first place to be able to believe in him and trust in him and have a relationship with him. So let me know what you guys think. This was a profound one. I enjoy talking about stuff like this. I'm not afraid of the idea of evolution. I think there's a lot of good argument for it. However, I believe God wired us for change, to change over time, to adapt to our surroundings. And that's what we see in evolution. However, I don't believe I came from a monkey. I believe I was created in the image of God. So let me know what you think. I'll see you guys in the next one. Subscribe if you haven't already. God bless you.